Hi everyone, it's Amy here from the blog I Think Therefore I Teach. Welcome to your next video instalment for religious studies. This one will be on religious experience. Right, it's quite a big one, so let's get cracking. Religious experience then. What I get my students to start with is we have a look at this quote from Albert Einstein. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He to whom the emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. The insight into the mystery of life, coupled though it will be with fear, has also given rise to religion. To know what is impenetrable to us really exists, manifesting itself as the highest wisdom and the most radiant beauty, which our dull faculties can comprehend only in the most primitive forms. This knowledge, this feeling is the centre of true religiousness. So I get my students to think about and consider what is Albert Einstein trying to convey here? What is he trying to explain? And I get them to look at the bits especially that are underlined to help them. It's fantastic to be able to take a small part of this to use in an answer as well to develop your essays. And what he is talking about here is an idea that you will come to learn through this topic, which is something called numinous. Numinous is where you are wrapped in that awe and wonder, but also have that sometimes that sense of fear. And these are things that religious experiences can do for you. You can be both fearful and wrapped in awe at the same time. But what he's talking about there is looking beyond the senses, looking beyond the dull faculties, the primitive forms of our existence, to really look beyond this. Because anyone that doesn't, anybody whose emotion is a stranger, is as good as dead. Anybody that can't appreciate what we've got, what you have, what you can experience, the mystery of life, is as good as dead. So this idea of going beyond this into deeper and truer knowledge, which might come about by religious experience. Religious experience, Peterson et al. In Reason and Religious Belief defines a religious experience as one where a person has or believes they have had an encounter with God. So I get my students to write down why this is interesting. I get them to write the quote down first and then why this is interesting. Why is that quote interesting? Why have I picked that quote? And I get them to pick out things like how it says a person has or believes they have had. That's quite important in that the person believes they have had an encounter with God. So even if nobody else believes it, if they believe it, then that needs to be recognised. And then that idea that it's an encounter with God. So does that include the Virgin Mary? Does that include an angel? Is that also a religious experience, or does it have to be with God? Religious experiences are revelations. Revelation is a word that you do need to know the definition of. It's the idea where you gain new knowledge. You gain knowledge that otherwise would not be known. So, for example, your religious studies lessons are not revelations. That you are not gaining something that you would not have known otherwise. Whereas religious experiences often guide you to things that would never have been known. So, for example, one of the case studies that you will look at for this is Saint Bernadette and how she founded the Lord's Spring, and how if she hadn't have had those visitations from the Virgin Mary, we'd have never necessarily found that spring water, which is still one of the greatest pilgrimages within Christianity. And so that is a revelation. And so I get my students then at this point to write down as many religious experiences that they can think of. And normally we push to about 25-ish. We start to kind of move into exorcisms and things which make it a little bit sillier. But it's the idea of what do you actually class as an experience of the religion or of the religious nature. So give it a go. Types of religious experience. The first type that you have to know is corporate. Corporate means group. Corporate means more than one person. And so it's extremely important that you know the meaning of that word, because examiners often use that as a question. Critically assess corporate religious experiences. If you don't know what the word corporate means, you'll be stuck. And it's also very important to know what examples class as corporate. So it is any group one. So you could do church prayer. You could do Mecca, you could do all sorts of different ones. You could talk about St. Paul because he was in a group when he had the religious experience, etc., on the road to Damascus. So there are lots of ones that you could do. We do Toronto Blessing, Whirling Dervish and Lords. Couple of names to bring in here. Anthony Flew says that collecting together a series of weak arguments does not make a strong argument, and he gives the example of the 10 leaky buckets. Now, I really like this example. I really like what Anthony Flew is saying here. Basically, what he is arguing is, just because you have lots of people saying something's happening, so lots of people saying that they've experienced the blessing in Toronto blessing, does not make it a strong argument. Just because lots of people say it doesn't make it a strong argument. It's like having lots of buckets with holes in it. Having 10 leaky buckets doesn't make one good bucket. But is that really fair? Do you actually think that having lots of people saying it is more convincing than just one person saying it? And how can this criticism be used? So I get my students to then write how Anthony Flew's argument can be used against the arguments above. J.L. Mackey points out as well that people do sometimes unintentionally, not deliberately, but unintentionally mislead and exaggerate accounts. So they embellish a bit. This is kind of like the mass hysteria idea that one person has it and then the next person carries it on and then it gets bigger and bigger and, you know, then it spreads around corporately around the group. Now, this PowerPoint does not go into the details of the different religious experiences, but that's because they're very, very easy to research. And actually, when I do this with my students, I get them to do a little bit of reading and then we watch a lot of clips on YouTube. So there's an awful lot available. And as long as you know roughly a few key facts about them and the sorts of religious experience that people have, the links that you can make, then that would be enough to be able to back up your essay. Personal testimonies. If you get a question that talks about personal testimonies, again, you need to be specific of which ones you are going to talk about. We look at numinous St. Teresa and St. Bernadette. However, what Swinburne adds in at this point, and it can be used as both a strength and a weakness, hence why there's no tick or cross next one, because it depends how you wish to use him. The principle of credulity is the idea that testimonies should be taken at face value unless there is significant evidence to prove them wrong. So I get my students again to use that principle against the ones above, certainly St. Teresa and St. Bernadette. So for example, St. Teresa, when you do your research into her case, had malaria when she had her religious experience. Malaria can still kill people to this day. Very, very serious. You hallucinate, you have extreme body pain. And so she had a religious experience when she was going through that. That could present significant evidence to actually say that it wasn't a religious experience and she was just feverish from the malaria. So that's how the principle of credulity could be used against Teresa. Whereas St. Bernadette saw the Virgin Mary over a number of different periods. She actually found the Lords, she found the spring of healing water. So there was evidence to say that actually it was true. However, St. Bernadette was extremely poor, and so it brought a lot of importance and recognition to her and her community, so it could be another reason why it isn't something that we should class as significant evidence. So hence why that principle of credulity is really good, to be able to explore the different case studies that you've got to work out. Is it significant? Should it be taken at face value, etc.? Are personal testimonies enough to support the validity of religious experiences? Now, that's a really important question. What that means is a personal testimony is one person's account. Is one person's account of what happened enough to say that religious experiences are valid or not? And again, you have to decide where you're going with that one. In other words, can religious experiences be seen as more valid because of the personal witness accounts, or less? Maybe compare it to corporate. Is it more or less valid? Are they both invalid? Are they both valid for different reasons? And exploring this topic with those questions in mind really help you get that evaluative nature of your essay. Richard Swinburne in The Existence of God, 1979, provides 5 ways to categorise personal testimonies. The first one, then, he says that it's experience of God through a common public sensory object, something that's out in the open, common, and it's something that you can see with your senses. And so, for example, seeing God in a sunset or an ocean, that's what again we call numinous. Numinous, you can experience the awe and wonder of God through anything. It's that feeling that when you walk into a cathedral and you're just overwhelmed with that feeling of grandeur. People often link that to numinous, and so that would be an experience of God in somewhere that's common, open and public to everyone. The second one is an experience of God through an unusual public sensory object, so something of not of the norm, but you still see it with your senses. So, for example, the appearance of Virgin Mary at Lourdes to St Bernadette, or the bush that burned but was not consumed to Moses. So, and the bush that then spoke to Moses as well. These are unusual. They're not of the norm, but you still out in public. Lourdes is still out in public. The burning bush was still out in public, and you could still see it with your senses, but it was not normal. The third is the experience of God through private sensations that can be described in normal sensory language. So a person might claim to experience God through a dream or a vision. Experience of God through private sensations that cannot be described in normal sensory language. So something that is so private that you cannot put into words. That's known as ineffable. Ineffable means you cannot express it, you cannot put into words. It's just something that you know, but you cannot explain how you know it. Ineffable is one of William James's words where we're going shortly. St. Teresa of Avila is a very good one for this. She says, I was at prayer when I saw Christ at my side, or to put it better, I was conscious of him, for neither with the eyes of my body nor those of my soul did I see anything. But as this was not an imaginary vision, I cannot discern in what form. Now, I know there's a lot of words there, and you're thinking, well, she hasn't failed to, put it into words, but she can't actually explain how she knew Christ was there. She couldn't see him with her eyes, her senses, she couldn't see it with her soul, she just knew it. And so she couldn't express in normal language how she had this private experience that she did. The fifth and final one is an experience of God that is not mediated by any sensations. A person claims to be aware of God through intuition, such as higher meditational states of Hinduism and Buddhism. This links nicely into the whirling dervish, for example, or Guru Nanak, who had 3 days drinking nectar in the water with God. So that would link in with that one. Now, I think one thing to be, or a couple of things to be aware of is you do not need to number these. So please do not say the fifth one of Richard Swinburne's. Just talk about them directly. Richard Swinburne, in The Existence of God, says an experience of God that is not mediated. Second of all, you do not need all of them in an essay. The reason I gave you all 5 is just so that you can pick and choose which one works for whichever essay you're writing about. And you do not need to write about all of them in this order or anything like that. So simply pick out the one. If you're talking about the whirling dervish, just pick out number 5. If you're talking about ineffability or St. Teresa, pick out number 4. So just pick out and write about the one, linking it directly back to Richard Swinburne, and that's plenty. Conversion. You need to know conversion stories. Conversion is where you go from either no religion to religion or from one religion to another religion. The 3 that we do is Saul to St. Paul, Nicky Cruz and Guru Nanak. Again, plenty out there to research. Guru Nanak is brilliant. Nicky Cruz is your modern day gangster that found God. And obviously St. Paul, we cover St. Paul a lot, but he wasn't always a good Christian boy. So have a look at St. Paul when he was originally Saul and what happened to him. There's fish scales, there's bread baskets over walls, there's all sorts. So have a look at the Saul to St. Paul conversion as well. Now that at this stage my students have researched 9 different 3 personal, 3 corporate, 3 conversion, I get them to rank order the most to least reliable and write a short justification for each. I get them to consider the reasons that corporate might be seen as more valid than an individual, and then how convinced are they at this point that religious experiences point to God. So I get them at this point to do a bit of a summary of what we've done so far before we start looking into some of the key names and arguments. The first major name that you must know, Richard Swinburne is an extra, Anthony Flew is an extra, William James you have to know. So William James, 1842 to 1910. William James wrote a book called The Varieties of Religious Experience. Please be careful and don't call it The Variety of Religious Experiences. If it was just a variety, then it would be a very short book. It has to be varieties, plural. So just be careful with the how you get his book down. He believes that verification, proving them, was not crucial RE religious experiences. He believes the experience of the individual was real and that that is what is important. It is self-authenticating. That's a key word for William James. Basically, the person who has the experience, it's real for them. It's clear that God exists for that person. It's authentic to that person. I think that's a really clever argument because when it comes to religious experiences, who are we to judge if that person has or hasn't had one? What gives us the right to be able to judge the authenticness of their, I don't think that's even a word, of their experiences, the validity of their experiences? If they believe it's real and it makes them a better person, a happier person, a well-rounded person, does it really matter? And so that's what William James is arguing here, that it's real to them. Religious experiences are often solitary, in which the individuals experience the divine or God. So even with the whirling dervish, which is corporate, because you can watch it as an audience, they do it together collectively as a group. When they're whirling and they're spinning, they are having the connection meditatively with God. And so it's not where God comes to all of them. They will have the individual experience. So even if it's corporate, like Toronto Blessing, they do it as a group in Toronto at the end of the aeroplane runway, but it's still the individual that has that experience. He admitted it's not logical proof that God exists, but evidence in support of God. So again, this is why I like William James. He's not saying God exists. Religious experiences, God exists. He's just saying it could be used as evidence to support God. Experience is explained as part of the person's psychological makeup. This is a psychological phenomenon. It's natural, like thinking or self-awareness, and it is central to your belief. James leaves open the possibility of God's existence. So again, he is not arguing for God's existence. He's not saying that therefore this shows that God does exist. He's leaving that open. All he's saying is something happens to these people, and I'm going to catalogue what happens to them. You've got a couple of nice quotes there from him as well. Religion leads to consistency, stability. Now that is really true. Religion does lead to consistency. For any religion, you have the prayer times within Islam. You have the Sabbath within Judaism. You have the prayers, the rosary within Catholicism. These are all consistent. We need consistency to give our lives stability. He also says the person of religion is not God, but more life, a larger, richer, more satisfying life. The idea that you just get more out of life, you appreciate life more when you have faith. What were his methods then? William James was a psychologist, and I get my students straight away to say why that is a good thing. And so, for example, psychology is a type of science. It also means that he's not coming at it from either an atheist or a religious perspective, so he's quite unbiased in that respect. And the other strength is that most often when we've done psychologists like Freud, they always go on the negative. We know that he's actually coming at it from more of a scientific perspective. This is what I explored, this is what I investigated, you draw your own conclusions. He collected many testimonies of people who claim to have had religious experiences. Again, he is not arguing that they have had religious experiences. He's just saying that they claim it, they believe it, it's self-authenticating to them. He analysed them, he put them into categories, then he noted the common features. So I get my students to pick one of the following words: systematic, methodical, regulated and scientific, and just get them to explain briefly what he's trying to do or achieve. He noted the effects on people's lives. Why is that significant? Why is looking at the effects important? Let's have a quick think. This is so important because he couldn't study their actual experiences. He wasn't there for their actual religious experience. Even if he was there, they're still personal. He can't get in somebody's mind. He can't see the dream, see the vision. And so all he could see, actually study, was the person in front of him. All he could study was the person, their account, and what he told them, and how the religious experience had affected them. That's what he could see, so that's what he studied, so that's what he focused on. This is known as a pragmatic approach. Means he was concerned with the actual practical effects on people, not supernatural speculation. He's not arguing that it's a supernatural speculation. He's just saying that he doesn't know either way. He doesn't know either way if it is God. He doesn't know either way if they did actually have them. But something's happened to these people and I'm going to document it. The effects, James could not see their actual religious experience, but he could see and study their effects. He is not, to be again very clear, he is not trying to prove religious experiences happen or that God exists. He is just simply saying something happens to these people and I'm going to scientifically investigate what. The findings. Commonly, these experiences have a profound effect on people. It is life transforming. and it's life transforming in the positive, as in the person that had these experiences have a happier outlook on life, a sense of purpose and meaning, benefits to sense of morality, better relationship with others. And we only have to look at, for example, the conversion stories. Nicky Cruz went from being a gang leader to finding God, happier outlook. St. Paul went from being a tax man that hunted down people to actually finding Christ, finding God, and being the messenger, his sense of purpose in his life. We had Guru Nanak, who created Sikhism because because of the join of Islam and Hinduism, just constrained what he wanted to explore between him and God, and so he founded his own faith. Again, sense of purpose and meaning. So even if these religious experiences are not real, the effects, the things that happen to these people are real, and it's very, very positive. James distinguished between the healthy-minded soul and the sick soul. Healthy-minded are open to ideas, possibilities, optimistic, hopeful. Sick souls are cynical and sceptical. Religious experiences, tend to make people healthy-minded, open, optimistic, hopeful. I'll let you guess which one Dawkins falls into. Oh, there we go. Now, what is absolutely key for William James? This is a pass-fail minimum. You have to mention these four. You do not have to mention them all together. You can split them up in an answer, but you must explore these four. This is absolutely essential. There are four ways to define religious experiences. The first is ineffable. It cannot be put into words. Noetic, you gain the revelation, you gain information you otherwise would not know. Transiency, it doesn't last long, but it's life transforming. So the experience itself might not last long, but it will change your life. And the person undergoing it is passive. They have no control, they are taken over. Now, you must know all four of these for your exam and how to apply them to different religious experiences. Also be aware that just because you don't know the transiency of a religious experience, or you don't know the passivity of a religious experience, does not mean it's not a religious experience. It just means that you don't know it. So, for example, don't say that Saint Teresa is not a religious experience because she was able to put it into words. No, she was able to put what she could into words, but there was still part of it. So don't use these to necessarily judge the veracity of a religious experience because you don't know them well enough because you weren't there. You could always question it. So for Toronto Blessing, I get my students to question, well, what actually is the noetic quality of Toronto Blessing? They bark like dogs and walk with people on leads and howl at God. If you watch some YouTube clips, you'll see all those things. What revelation's that? What do we gain about God that he likes to play tricks with us, that he likes us to do, scream and shout and cry and shake? What's the revelation there? And so you can question the revelation, but don't discredit a religious experience in me just because of that. The main conclusions drawn by William James: the effects are real. Something really happens to these people. Therefore, there has to be a real cause. You can't have a real effect without a real cause. If God is believed to be the cause, then God exists to those individuals. Real and positive, when something is real and it is true, it has positive effects. Whereas something that's false, made up, a lie, has negative effects. And so these people have positive effects, which again helps him draw the conclusion that something real and true does happen to them. Therefore, God is likely to be real and true to these individuals. Scripture is often seen as the central source of churches, but James emphasises the importance of revelation, prayer. This notable change in behaviour is why James suggested that religious experience was the inspiration and source of religious institutions. It's the idea that we should focus on these religious experiences more than we actually do currently, because they are the inspiration of the foundations of what we believe. He compared parallels and similarities between religious experience and other types of experiences, such as dreams and hallucinations. Once more, he's a scientist. He's not drawn into superstitions, as we said. He's not drawn into the idea that God exists. He compared it to lots of other things as well. He suggested that it could be linked to our subconscious ideas, potential parallel link there to Freud, and how interesting, because we're going to go on to Freud, but how interesting that Freud concludes that therefore God does not exist, whereas William James keeps it open. He concluded that religious experiences on their own do not demonstrate God's existence, although They can suggest the existence of something larger. So he's not closing the door, he's not saying it's God, but he's saying, it's maybe something. The final section that you need to know for religious experience before we move on to the critics is this idea of mysticism. Now, the examiners might use the word mysticism in your question. Mysticism is where you have direct knowledge of God, spiritual truth, or ultimate reality, so there is some level of revelation. It can be subjective or personal. Mystical experience is an experience of something transcendent and beyond normal awareness. Basically, all religious experiences you have studied are mystical in some way. And so basically you're just getting tricked. You're getting tricked to know, do you know what mysticism means? Yes, you do. It's everything I've just covered so far. They're just using a different word. F.C. Happold talks about different types of mysticism in his book, Mysticism. What a very inventive title. He said that there's mysticism of love and union, being part of something larger, a bit like what William James has just argued. Mysticism of knowledge and understanding, the idea of looking for answers to secrets of the universe, that links into your noetic quality there, the idea of revelation and knowledge. You then have soul mysticism, complete self-fulfillment. This doesn't involve God necessarily, but just finding yourself. Nature mysticism is belief that God is everywhere, is immanent, a bit like numinous. And God mysticism, where your soul connects and returns to God, the immortal and infinite ground with God. Now, again, you do not need all of these. I would say pick one or two. You don't have to know which one's a type and which one's an aspect. Just a couple of these and an answer will look fabulous. That you then evaluate and link to your line of argument, of course, so don't just name dump. Right. Let's have a look at our critics. 3 main critics. The first one you have to know is psychological. Now, I only say that very, very specifically because there's also physiological, and the two words look very, very similar. That's caught a lot of students out in the past when it's asked for psychological and they've done the other one, or physiological and they've done the other one. And under great amounts of stress, it's understandable, you still don't get any marks. So be very, very careful if when you come to your exam, make sure you read the word. Is it psychological or physiological? So psychological, because religious experiences are unusual, some conclude they may be interpreted as just illusions. They're not real. Do you think that's fair though? We know our minds play tricks on us, or that some children have imaginary friends, or you might even hear voices saying your name, or a sudden sense of foreboding. So there's many times our minds play tricks on us. You know, you get that sudden shudder and you don't know why, or you think you've heard a voice or someone calling your name out and that there isn't anyone there, or the idea that children have imaginary friends. There's lots of times when our minds can play tricks on us. Does that mean it's an illusion? Or do children actually see things we don't? Do children actually, are we so closed off to these experiences now that children can see things that are there but we can't see them? Are hearing voices actually more your sixth sense? So not to that, I don't want to freak you all out. That sounds a bit freaky, doesn't it? But the point here is we downplay them, we play them off as just not real illusions. But the question is, can we do the same for religious experiences? We are prone to perceptual errors, so maybe experiences with God or a greater power is just another example. Perceptual errors, perceiving things wrongly. Feuerbach and Freud are our main key psychological explorers. They are the main 2 psychologists we look at. But please do not forget William James is also a psychologist. So if it asks for psychological effects, look at William James and compare him and how he looks at it positively, whereas Feuerbach and Freud look at it negatively. Also make sure you spell Feuerbach's name right. We then have Myers. Prayer is a vital component to the psychological well-being of many individuals. So he's saying that it's necessary for the well-being, not saying it's real or that you're really talking to God, but it's needed for people. Who are we to judge that person for praying if it helps their well-being? And yes, that is not Myers. For any horror fans out there, you'll probably can't see it anyway because it'll be behind my little video slot, but there is one of Michael Myers there just because I'm a horror fan. The first critic is Feuerbach. Now I'm just going to pop all that up there. I spend quite a long time on this bubble with my students. I love the things Feuerbach says. I think Feuerbach is great. I'd talk about Feuerbach any day over Freud. Feuerbach says religion is an illusion. It's a fiction that people mistake for reality. Humans feel alienated in their own lives and project their wishes onto God. And if people were able to reach potential, they wouldn't need religion. Society will evolve and religion will disappear, and God is an invention of the human mind. Brilliant. What I recommend that you do is work through each one and decide whether you agree or disagree with what he is saying, because that as it stands is not going to really help you in an answer. That as it stands is not a valuation. That is his view. So if you just wrote his view, that's not a valuation. That's just fact. That's what he said. You have to engage with what he's saying there to say whether you agree or disagree, whether it works or doesn't work. So, for example, he's arguing that religion is a fiction people mistake for reality. So, like people that believe Harry Potter is real. That's basically what he's arguing, is that Jesus is Harry Potter. Please don't write that in an essay. But it's the idea that people don't have the intelligence to recognise what is real and what is fiction. And so anybody that believes in religion it's a fiction, that they've made that mistake. Is that really fair, that everyone that believes in religion, it's fictitious, but they confuse it with reality? The next one about the humans can feel alienated in their own lives and project their wishes onto God. Now, that is very true. Humans do feel alienated. You live and are surrounded by hundreds of people, but it's often very lonely. You can be very lonely as a human being. You can be surrounded by lots of people, but you can also feel alienated. And so therefore he's arguing that people then turn to God. They project these wishes onto God. Why is that a bad thing though? Why is that a bad thing? If people were able to reach potential, there's no need for religion. There's a lot of problems or a lot of questions you can ask there, such as why does religion hold you back? The idea that implies that anybody that is religious is not going to reach their potential, but we have many people that are extremely sophisticated academically that have religious views and have fulfilled their potential. What evidence is he drawing that on, that without religion we'd be able to reach our potential? So there's questions and problems with that idea. Moving into the next one, which I have the biggest problem with, society will evolve and religion will disappear. Based on what evidence? Since the beginning of time, since the beginning of man, there has always been religion. There has always been religion in some form or way, whether it's the Native Americans worshipping the earth and the weather, the harvest, whether it's been the Egyptians and the ideas of the afterlife and the mummification. There's always, religion will not disappear. Religion evolves as well. So society has evolved significantly, even since Feuerbach's time. Religion is still here. And don't forget, Christianity might be going down in this country as far as secularisation. Religion itself is not, though. Religion is still just as prominent and just as strong because it evolves. So religion will not disappear, or certainly if it does, he has no evidence to back that up with as far as that statement. We don't know if society will evolve if religion wasn't here. And that God is the invention of the human mind. You could be very clever, this would be very clever if you wanted to, and use kind of the ontological argument against this, the idea that just because you don't think God exists doesn't mean God doesn't exist. So this idea of, I always give the example of square root numbers. I do not understand maths at all. I do not understand square root numbers one bit. But just because I don't understand it or I don't believe it doesn't mean a square root doesn't exist. So just like this, just because you don't believe God exists doesn't affect whether God does or does not exist. I also get my students to have a little research of the God helmet. It's quite interesting. Freud, good old Freud. Freud, you just can't beat him. He is a very famous psychologist. Now, please, in your essays, do not, there are many problems with Freud, many problems. Please do not really criticise him heavily though. Yes, he snorted cocaine and stuck anything he could find up his nose. Yes, he made some very outrageous arguments based on child development, but he is revolutionary when it comes to the ideas of psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis, analysing your psyche, your mind, is the idea of the lay on the couch and tell me your problems. We still do that today. So much of our understanding of the way our minds work is from Freud. He explains away religion as purely a psychological phenomenon, cushion us from the harsh realities. We've made it up to cushion ourselves from life. He calls it an obsessional neuroses. So an obsessional neuroses is the idea of, because of problems experienced in life, traumas that are repressed, that you push down in your mind, we develop obsessive neuroses in adulthood. So obsessive means you have to do it. It's an obsession. It's something that you have to do repeatedly, like repetitive behaviour. Neuroses means it's not based on fact. And so an example of this are phobias. Most of the time, phobias are a neuroses. Like I have a phobia of spiders. What can a spider? Yes, I know there's poisonous spiders, but really, what can a spider do to me? Nothing. Yet I am still absolutely terrified of them. That's a neuroses. It doesn't, it isn't explainable. Quite a lot of phobias are logical to an extent, like swimming in the sea. A lot of people don't like it when they can't feel what the bottom or see what's happening, because you might think that a shark might eat you or something might grab you, etc. So that has certain levels of logic. But most neuroses we have, most phobias we have, are not are based on something traumatic that's happened. So think of the phobia that you have, if you have any. Can you link it back to the trauma that started that phobia off? Something will have triggered your phobia to happen. The obsessive part, or the repetitive part, to link it to religion, yes, so belief in God is an obsessional neurosis that religion satisfies. There are many repetitive behaviours that happen in religions. I've already mentioned about the prayer within Islam, that repetitive behaviour, that's an obsessional neuroses, that if you don't pray at that certain time, chances are nothing bad will happen to you, but that is what belief does. They believe that they have to, within that time period, show their love to Allah. Where another obsessional neurosis would be the counting of the rosary beads. That's a repetitive behaviour. If they missed a rosary bead off or something like that, nothing bad would happen. The prayer that you used to say before when you were little, before you went to sleep, it was something like, if I die before I wake my soul to take, or something like that. Basically, they were praying that if they died in their sleep, that they go to heaven. And that it was the belief that if they didn't say this prayer, they wouldn't then go to heaven if they died in their sleep. I mean, how morbid is that? And so religion becomes that obsessional neurosis. It becomes this repetitive behaviour, this belief in God, and religion satisfies one of those needs that we have. But it's just an obsessional neuroses. Freud and the mind. Freud says there's three parts of the mind. The id is our human instincts, the desires and appetites of our humanity. The ego is shaped by external influences, traumas, educational upbringing. And the superego is part of the ego. It's the human reason, the making decisions, the parenting values and influence mould the superego. Superego is where the conscience is found. That comes into upper six in the topic of conscience. So this obviously should look very familiar because it's pretty much what Plato argues in the charioteer argument. Check that out if you don't already know it. But it's the idea here that there are three things that drive our mind, and depending on which one is the stronger drive as to what you maybe need more of or what your personality is. So, for example, if your id is very strong, then you are very gluttonous, very greedy, very selfish, very much me, want, I want it now. We then, of course, cannot cover Freud without looking at the ideas of the iceberg analogy. Hopefully this slide isn't timed and it won't move on in a couple of seconds. Is the idea of the iceberg analogy, that the tip of the iceberg is your conscious mind, what you're aware of, but deep down you have this huge iceberg underneath the water, which is your unconscious mind. And you have the water level where the tide comes in and out of the iceberg, and that's what comes in and out of, thought it would be timed. That's what comes in and out of this idea of I've lost my train of thought. When you have psychoanalysis, when you lay on the couch, that's what, when you go into like hypnotherapy or something like that, those are the ideas. Or when you dream, those are the ideas that maybe come into your mind. So often when you dream about things that have affected you in your day-to-day life. That's your unconscious coming into your subconscious mind. And you have the id, the ego, and the superego, the parts of the mind that Freud talks about. And what he argues is that, obviously, have a look into the Oedipus complex, which is where the love of your mother is. If you're boys, you fantasize about having a relationship with your mother. I'm not making it up, do Wikipedia it. Conscience is built up of the guilt of disappointing parents, and this is where the society's expectations come from in your superego. And basically, God is a replacement for the father figure, that you want to look up to someone, that you want to follow their example, and God basically is the parental figure. The parental figure is the one that, you know, punishes you or tells you when you're doing things right or wrong. And basically, we replace parents when we're old enough with God. So that's what he argues. And that conscience then, guilt of disappointing God, but actually it's just guilt for disappointing parents. Evaluation of Freud. He is the founder of psychoanalysis. The fundamental beliefs, he says, for the id, ego, superego, and the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious minds of the iceberg ideas. Clear that parents and environment do affect our morals and ethical ideas. However, huge flaws in his data collection. He studied one little boy called Little Hans. The case of Little Hans was basically, his mother used to go to Freud for the lay on my couch and talk to me. Freud was a bit of a ladies' man. And she basically said about how her little boy, she'd been bathing her little boy, and her little boy had gone something like, touch me there, mummy, I like it. And so I might have slightly put that out of context, but it was pretty much along those lines. And from there, Freud thought, aha! All little boys want to have sexual relationships with their mothers, and so they have to relate to their fathers, copy what their fathers do, because the mums like the fathers, and therefore once I am big and strong, I can take father's place and mum will love me like she loves dad. And so that's the whole of the Oedipus argument, and you have the Electra for the girls. But he argues that this is how we learn our morals, this is how we learn it from the environment and our outside experiences. And so that's again where we learn how to be moral, not from God. Whereas it's unethical, clearly unethical, to go from one little case of a little boy that says that to every man on the planet. It's also unscientific in that you can't homogenise everybody based on one case. What about children from single-parent families or modern families? Freud implies they are immoral, which is illogical. So again, if you don't have a daddy to relate to for the Oedipus complex when you're a child, then does that mean Freud would argue you'll grow up immoral, which is illogical? What happens if you have two mums? What happens if you have step families? Don't people have more control over their actions and decisions? And is it bordering on reductionist? Is it making it too simple? As in, you love your mum, and you want a relationship with your mum, therefore you relate for the father, you learn your morals from the father, and you eventually turn that onto God as the ruler, judge, etc., that you're to replace the parents that have formed your superego, that God now forms it. Is that a bit reductionist? Is it reducing it down to too simple a conclusion? Physiological. So again, make sure you get the right word. Drink, drugs, tiredness, illness, depression, fasting, hydration, or dehydration, all change the way that we think and experience the world. One mental state may deeply affect a physical state. So, for example, if you have lack of sleep, it's known that you hallucinate. St. Paul on the road to Damascus was in the desert, clearly dehydrated. Therefore, they all saw the vision of God or the vision of Jesus. Fasting, often whirling dervish or Muslims fast, and there's fasting within Christianity. That could again lead to these religious experiences. William of Ockham. Now this gets used far too much in exams, so if you leave it out, it's no big deal. I would probably avoid it, but I like to give you a good coverage. Famously says entities must not be multiplied beyond necessity. In other words, the simplest solution that covers all the facts is usually the best. This is known as Occam's razor. Now, I would not use this as a support of religious experiences, because the simplest solution usually is not God. St. Teresa of Avila, God or malaria? Maybe malaria. Guru Nanak 3 days in the water drinking nectar with God? No. Possibly that he just wanted to come up with something as a reason why to create a different religion, or maybe he just went for a walk for 3 days, spent 3 days outside, or maybe he did fall into the water and was having problems. You know, it's the idea that the simplest solution most often does not result in God. I think the only one that you don't study anymore, which I think is fascinating, is stigmata. Some of the things that happen to stigmatics, a stigmatic is someone that experiences the wounds of Christ when he was being crucified. They actually have the physical wounds. There's a lot of very strange things that happen to a stigmatic that actually the simplest solution might be something of the not of this world, something more godlike. Check out stigmata, but you can't go too much detail into that because it's not one of the examples they want you to know now. Bertrand Russell in his autobiography remarked upon Beatrice Webb's focus on fasting, saying, if you eat too little, you'll see visions, and if you drink too much, you see snakes. Fairness, I don't think I've ever drank so much that I see snakes. I wouldn't really want to. But the point is there, that if you do excesses to your body, things will happen. Also, poor diet. If you have a poor diet, you can experience something called delirium tremens or tremens. This is what happens to you when you have a lack of vitamin B. This is often what happens to alcoholics when they're withdrawing from alcohol. They shake terribly. If you were an alcoholic and you're being weaned off alcohol, they will actually give you medications to help with the side effects because you lack vitamin B, which is very much in, I think, lager ale, something like that. And so you can be very deficient and it can really affect you. So how does this link in? So we're not talking about alcoholics here. How does this link in is a lot of aesthetics, so monks, nuns, diet was very, very limited. Saint Teresa, Saint Bernadette, Saint Paul, Guru Nanak will have all had quite bad diets. And if they did lack vitamin B, not saying they did, but if they did lack it, it could explain the hallucinations, the paranoia, the visions, the voices, etc. So again, physiological, think of your physical. These are physical things. Psychological, psycho, mind. Now, I really like Alston's argument here. Alston comes to the defence and he says that our sense experience is generally reliable. Why do we not believe it then if what our senses tell us is a religious experience? So if I said today that I saw some sheep in a field, you'd believe me. Maybe because you've seen it yourself, etc. But why would I lie to you? So then if I saw something unusual in a field, why would I then doubt that, oh, actually my eyes are deceiving me, yet they never deceived me any other times, but now that I'm seeing something unusual, they're deceiving me. Why do you suddenly jump and reject your senses when what they're telling you was unusual? And so what he's arguing basically is do not reject your senses so quickly when you accept them generally most of the time. That just because it's unusual isn't a good enough reason to then say, oh, they must be wrong. So it does not show, again, that they are God. Just simply that it's not fair to reject them as illogical and irrational just because they're not of the norm. So I like that argument. General strengths and weaknesses, just to help plump out your essay evaluatively. Individual knows and understands the meaning of what they see or feel, and they're relatively common. They do happen quite often. Can all reports be wrong? People that have them hold them with great conviction and often are consistent in their recollection. When people lie, their stories change. And so you might ask somebody their experience. A few weeks later, you'll ask them experience again, and the story changes. They embellish. It differs. Most of the time, when it's a religious experience, their story always stays very, very true and does not alter. That shows that consistency shows actually it's more likely to be real and true. Often experienced by people who are not mentally ill, not on drugs, and are rational and intelligent. Please don't say that everyone experiences them are on drugs, because again, it's quite offensive. Your examiner might have had a religious experience. You're then saying to them that they're on drugs or have got mental illness. So just be careful, because they are quite common. Religious experience is God taking an involvement in human affairs, so he's personal. But you can't do it too frequently, otherwise it would seriously jeopardise our free will. Problems, however, it could be the influence of drugs. They can produce hallucinations, similar effects on alcohol. Most occasions it's an individual, not a group, so you cannot empirically test that they're an emotional, personal response. There is no testing. Each one portrays the being differently. Which one is reliable? Spontaneous, you can never really verify or prove them. You can never put somebody in a room and say, right, we're going to wait until it happens. They're spontaneous. They're completely, you never know when they're going to happen. And they're not physical, they're private, they're individual. So again, you cannot verify. So most of the problems with them is that you cannot ever verify them. Do we need to though? Do we need to verify the truth? If that person believes it happened to them, they then become a better person. Who are we to judge? Finally, just as a reminder, you need to know your cases. These are the ones that my students cover. You might have done different ones, but as long as you have, my recommendation is 3 for corporate, 3 for personal, 3 for conversion, you will have enough. And I recommend that they know at least 4 interesting facts about each story. As an examiner, I would want to know that you actually know about the Toronto blessing, that you show me that you actually understand, what's the name of the people that started it? John and Carol Ann, if you want to know. What's the name of the book? Where did the name Toronto Blessing actually come from? What did they call themselves? Because it wasn't Toronto Blessing. That was actually something given by an English newspaper. So I want you to know at least 4 facts about the stories to show me that you actually know about them. Specific example, story and name, that's a bit harder with things like numinous and lords, but see if you can find one. See if you can find someone that talks about these things. Have a look from their books. Most of them have books. Nicky Cruz does, St. Paul does, the Toronto Blessing does, They have a number of books. They know how to make the money. St. Teresa has an autobiography. So have a look at their books, get a quote, and then think about how the story is linked to corporate, personal, and conversion. So, for example, the Whirling Dervish can link to corporate and personal. St. Paul can link to all 3. St. Paul converted from not Christian to Christian. It was also corporate because he was with a group of people on the road that then heard Jesus say, why do you torment me or punish me or something like that. But it was also personal in that St. Paul was the one that actually had the fish scales on his eyes, etc. So he links to all 3. So make sure you know how they link to those 3 ideas. And William James's 4. How did they link to transiency, passivity, noetic quality, and ineffability? Otherwise, that was a long one. Hopefully you found it useful though. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. Any questions, pop it below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss out on a video. Otherwise, I hope your revision, if you're starting it, is already going well for your summer exams. I hope this helps fill in any gaps that you might have, and I'll see you next time, everyone. Bye for now.